Welcome back. So this is a video continuation for our constraint tutorial. In this video, I will be talking about the default constraint. So the default constraint is basically used to actually put in a specific value should in case the user did not insert a value, right? Because initially, the SQL will assign a null value there, but then we have to default constraint allow us to actually set up a default value that will be input there. So let me try to put this in a student. So we have a student table, right? So what do we have in our student table? Let's select all from student. So in the student table, we have student ID, first name, last name, course code, age. So why don't we add something like gender? So alter table student, add a gender column, which would be a type of varchar, and then you should just take one value, right? Okay, so let's try and do it like this first, even before adding constraint. So now if we go to select student, now we have the gender table, which automatically assign null to the previous value. But let's insert into the student table first. Insert into student. Here we will define what values we want to insert into the student from the values in the student table. The ID will be auto-generated, so we'll start from first name, last name. We want to insert last name too. We want to insert course code. We want to insert age. Okay, but for now we don't want to insert the gender, right? Then what are the values of these parameters we put there? So the values of those parameters will be for the first name, let's assign Mary. For the last name, let's assign Brooks, right? For the course code, let's say she's registering for course 102. For the age, let's say Mary is 21 years old, and then we are not assigning any gender for now. So if I go ahead and insert this, inserted, one row affected. Now if we go to select student, you can see it automatically assign a null value there, right? Because there is no value there. So now what if instead of inserting a null value, we want it to actually insert something like u, which is a like u in something like this, which is like a value for unknown, because since the varchar will be taking one varchar up here will be taking one value, so it's either M for male or F for female, and if none is entered there, we don't want null, we want u, right? So that's where the default, we're going to write a default constraint there, which will assign anything that is imputed to that is not input to be u. So here we'll do, I will go back to the student table. We'll alter table student, because the table and the column already exist, right? So what we can do is actually alter it. Alter table student, add constraint. So we want to give the constraint a name, of course, df underscore student underscore default gender. So this I'm naming my constraint like this because I want it to be readable. It's a default constraint in the student table and the gender column, right? Add constraint default student, right? Then here I'll go ahead and use the default keyword, default. So what will be default? So I want the default to be u, right? So for the column gender, right? So this is our constraint there that we just added. Let's run that. So that is complete. So if we go here to the student table, look at the constraint. Currently there's no constraint there, right? If I refresh it, now that I've added it, if I refresh the student table, now we'll have a constraint there. You can see my constraint there, right? This is it. So default student constraint means that the constraint is there already. So now I'm going to go ahead and run this, let's add another person there. Let's add Richard Miller, registering for course 101, and Richard is 24 years old, right? So remember, we did not add gender there, right? So initially it added null for Mary. So if I go ahead and run it, instead of null, it will assign unknown you. So inserted, and if I go ahead and select all from student, we'll see that the Richard was assigned you, right? So by default, we did not add any value, so it automatically takes the default value in there. So, but one other thing, if I go ahead and add another student there, let's say our name is let me say Arlington, last name is Virginia, and registering for course 102, age is 24, and here I want to add gender actually, and here if I put a gender, let me say gender is F, right? Then it's going to insert the F, and if I go ahead and run it, we have the F there. But what if I go ahead here and do something like Sana Gardner, registered for 102, age is 23, but then I want to insert a null value. So let's see what will happen here. Insert that, then select from student. So it will insert a null value. It insert a null value because we actually insert a value here. So the default only kicks in when we don't, or we forget to insert the specific value in that column. That is when the default kicks in. You see that here we don't have the value at all. So instead of putting null by default, the default that we set there will kick in. But because we inserted null by ourselves, so the null will actually be seen there. So that is actually how the default constraints work. If you have any question, you can drop it in the comment section. Please click like, share, and subscribe. But if you don't subscribe, I wouldn't hold that against you. So see you in the next video. Thank you.